My name is Elaine Porter. I'm 67 years old. That afternoon, the air in my Charleston kitchen felt thick enough to taste. I'd been sorting through recipe cards when the phone rang, a polite, almost formal voice on the other end. "Hi, Mrs. Porter. It's Lauren." Lauren, my son Michael's fiancée, the woman who, in a few weeks, would officially become my daughter-in-law. She sounded perfectly pleasant, maybe a little too pleasant. She apologized for the mailing mix-up, explaining that my invitation must have gotten lost. "We wanted to make sure you have all the details," she said, her tone smooth as porcelain. "Oh, that's all right," I replied, though my chest tightened. "Where should I be? I'll stop by this evening with the address. It's at a private estate near Mount Pleasant. Very intimate, very special." True to her word, she arrived just before sunset. The air smelled of jasmine and salt from the harbor. She handed me a small cream envelope with my name written in a looping, elegant hand. Inside was a card, not an invitation, just a single line of ink with an address and the words, "Ceremony begins at 4. Lauren smiled, all polite grace and expensive perfume. "Michael's been so busy with work. He asked me to bring this by myself. We're really looking forward to having you there." I thanked her and pretended not to see how her eyes drifted around my small kitchen, the chipped mug on the counter, the faded curtains I'd sewn years ago. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but I let it go. After she left, I stood for a while in the quiet, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant cry of seagulls. Then I reached for the magnet shaped like an apple, the one Michael made in kindergarten, and pinned the note to the fridge door. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, without a single correction. Later, as the evening shadows stretched long across the linoleum floor, I whispered to myself, "Well, that's settled," though a faint unease stirred somewhere deep in my chest, small, but steady. I didn't know it then, but that single piece of paper would change everything. I still remember the first night Michael brought Lauren home. It was late spring, 2 years ago, and the azaleas were just starting to bloom along the fence. I'd made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and lemon pie his favorites. I wanted her to feel welcome, to see that our small house could still hold warmth. Lauren arrived in a tailored white dress that looked too crisp for the humidity. She smiled as she stepped inside, her perfume filling the hallway. "It's so charming," she said, glancing around at the photographs lining the wall, every stage of Michael's life captured in crooked wooden frames. At dinner, she barely touched her food. "It's so home-style," she said after a pause, smiling as if she'd just offered the highest praise. I smiled back, though the word lingered like a smudge I couldn't wipe away. She spoke about her job in her father's firm, about charity galas and summer trips to Hilton Head, about how marriage was a partnership of shared expectations. She never once said love. Michael looked proud, eyes bright the way they'd been when he brought home his first good report card. He reached for her hand as if to anchor himself to her calm certainty, and that, somehow, made me bite back every worry that rose in my throat. After dessert, Lauren offered to help with the dishes, but only stacked the plates neatly by the sink before checking her phone. I stood beside her, drying my hands, studying the reflection of our faces in the kitchen window, hers composed, mine careful. That night, after they left, the house felt heavier. I tried to tell myself it was only the silence returning. But deep down, I already knew Lauren didn't want a mother-in-law. She wanted control. The night Michael told me he was getting married, the cicadas outside were so loud it felt like the air itself was vibrating. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his tie loosened, his face lit by the small yellow lamp we'd had since his childhood. "Mom," he said softly, "you'll always be part of my life. Front row seat. I swear." I smiled, though something in me hesitated before believing it. He reached across the table and took my hand, his palm warm, familiar. For a moment, he looked like the boy who used to wake me up at dawn, clutching a toy car, asking if we could go see the sunrise over the Cooper River. After he left that night, I sat alone, thinking about all the times I'd stayed up sewing his graduation clothes, or the nights I'd counted pennies to pay hospital bills when he was small and coughing. We had built a life out of quiet resilience, just the two of us against the world. Now, there was someone else, someone who spoke for him, organized his calendar, returned his calls, someone whose words he trusted more than mine. I stood and poured myself a cup of tea, watching the steam curl toward the ceiling. The refrigerator hummed behind me, steady and low. On its door, the small slip of paper, the wedding address, sat beneath the apple magnet. I looked at it for a long time, the ink looping in a hand that wasn't my son's. A promise, written by someone else, asking me to believe. The morning of the wedding began before sunrise. The air in Charleston was already thick with humidity, the kind that made even breathing feel like work. I ironed my blue linen dress slowly, pressing each seam until the fabric lay smooth and cool under my hands. It was the same dress I'd bought months earlier, a small promise to myself that I would look proud when my son said his vows. I tied my hair back in a low bun, slipped on my pearl earrings, and dabbed perfume behind my ears, the same scent I'd worn on his high school graduation day. Then I checked the note on the fridge one last time, the black ink still sharp against the cream paper. Outside, the cicadas were already singing as I stepped into the heat. A taxi pulled up, its driver a man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a voice that carried a slow southern rhythm. I handed him the slip of paper with the address. He squinted. "You sure?" "Ma'am, ain't no venue out there. Far as I know." I smiled, smoothing the skirt of my dress. "I'm sure. My son's getting married today." He nodded, tipped his cap, and started the car. As we drove, the city faded into stretches of marshland and tall grass. Wooden bridges creaked beneath the tires, and the smell of salt water drifted through the cracked window. I watched the horizon shift blue, becoming gold, then gray, and the road narrowing until it was little more than gravel. Each mile seemed to carry me farther from the Charleston I knew, from the steady rhythm of my small life. Still, I held on to that folded piece of paper like it was a map to happiness itself. We had been driving for nearly an hour when the pavement began to crumble beneath the tires. The marshland thickened into clusters of cypress trees, their roots twisting like fingers through the mud. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, hesitant. "Ma'am," he said, slowing down. "I think we've gone too far." Outside, there was nothing, no music, no cars, no sound except the wind moving through tall grass and the faint call of gulls somewhere beyond the trees. The smell of salt water hung in the air, sharp and familiar. "Could you check again?" I asked, my voice too calm to hide the tremor underneath. He nodded, pulled over beside a patch of reeds, and unfolded a small road map from his glove box. "Ain't no estate around here, ma'am. Just marsh and old shrimp docks." I took out my phone, my hands shaking. No signal. I lifted it higher, leaned toward the window, tried again. Nothing. I called Michael once, then again, my voice echoing through the empty line. Voicemail. A heavy stillness filled the car. The truth arrived quietly, as if it had been sitting beside me all along. I looked at the folded slip of paper in my lap, the elegant handwriting that had guided me here. "She lied to me," I whispered. The driver heard but said nothing. After a moment, he cleared his throat gently. "Want me to head back toward town? Maybe stop somewhere to ask?" I nodded. My voice caught in my throat. "Yes. Please." He drove carefully, the wheels crunching over gravel. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger hair pinned too neatly, lipstick fading, eyes rimmed red. When we reached the edge of town again, he pointed toward a small white church up on a hill. That's St. Peter's, might be where guests meet before the ceremony. I clung to that sliver of hope like breath. Let's try there. The church was quiet, its doors open to the breeze. I stepped out of the taxi, the heat clinging to my dress, and walked inside. A priest stood near the altar, straightening hymn books. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is there a wedding here today?" "The Porter Whitman wedding." He shook his head kindly. "No weddings here today, ma'am." I nodded, unable to speak. My knees trembled. I stepped back outside, the world blurring into sunlight and salt air. The driver waited, hat in hand, eyes soft with pity. I sat on the stone steps, feeling the wind tangle through my hair, the sea breeze cooling my damp skin. Tears slid down, tracing lines through my makeup. Around me, the world carried on the waves, the birds, the distant hum of cars, while I sat there in my best dress, holding a paper that had led me to nowhere at all. I couldn't bring myself to go home. The thought of walking back into that quiet house, past the empty chair by the window, felt unbearable. Instead, I told the driver to drop me off near the market square. My shoes pinched, my throat ached, but I kept walking until I saw a small cafe tucked between two antique stores. The scent of coffee and baked bread drifted through the open door. Inside, the air was cool, humming softly with the sound of jazz and clinking cups. I must have looked like a ghost dress wrinkled, hair undone, eyes swollen, but the young woman behind the counter didn't flinch. "Rough morning," she asked gently. I tried to smile. "You could say that. My son's getting married, and I seem to have lost the wedding." Her eyebrows lifted slightly, then softened into something like concern. "Let's fix that." She came around the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm Rachel." We sat by the window with her phone between us. Her fingers moved quickly over the screen. "Okay," she murmured. "Let's see. Wedding venues in Charleston today." One by one, she showed me pictures, ballrooms, gardens, country estates, but none looked right. Then she paused, her thumb stopping mid-scroll. "This one, the Ashley Estate. It's by the river, about 20 minutes out. Does this look familiar?" The photo glowed on the screen, white roses, gold ribbons, a grand veranda. I recognized the exact shade of flowers Lauren had posted weeks earlier, captioned "Final touches before forever." My breath caught. "That's it." Rachel nodded, already reaching for her car keys. "I can call you a taxi," I thanked her, clutching my purse to my chest. Not out of pride, not anymore. It was something smaller, quieter, the will to stand, to keep moving, to find my son. When the cab arrived, I gave the driver the new address. He looked at me in the mirror. "You sure about this one?" "Ma'am." I nodded. "I'm sure." The taxi turned off the main road and into a narrow lane lined with magnolia trees. Through the window, I caught glimpses of cars parked in neat rows, white ribbons fluttering from their mirrors. The hum of music drifted faintly through the air, the sound of celebration, of everything I was supposed to be part of. Then I saw it, a tall iron gate, its arch wrapped in white roses and gold silk. Beyond it stood a grand house, gleaming in the late afternoon sun, its windows glowing with movement and light. The taxi stopped. My hands trembled as I paid the driver and stepped out. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I approached the gate. A man in a dark suit stood guard by the entrance. "Private event," he said, raising a hand. I tried to steady my voice. "It's all right. I'm the groom's mother." He hesitated, eyes flicking over my face, my dress, the paper I held. "Do you have an invitation, ma'am?" I opened my purse, fumbling for the folded note. This is the address I was given." He glanced at it, brow furrowing. Before he could speak, laughter echoed from beyond the gate. 3 men appeared, dressed in matching gray suits. My breath caught. Michael was in the middle of them, his tie slightly crooked, his smile bright, my boy, grown and handsome, on his wedding day. He froze when his eyes met mine. "Mom." I stepped closer, my voice trembling. "Michael." Lauren gave me the wrong address. The color drained from his face. He walked up to the gate and took the paper from my hand. His eyes moved over it. Once. Twice. The laughter behind him faded. "That can't be right," he said quietly. "I've been looking for you all morning," I whispered. "I thought I'd missed it all." He looked at me, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. Then he drew in a breath, his jaw tightening. "Wait here." He turned and walked back through the gate, his figure swallowed by sunlight and murmurs. I stood outside, the roses swaying above me, the water glinting beyond the house. The music had stopped. All I could hear was the faint rustle of leaves and the distant, uneven beat of my own heart. From where I stood, just outside the gate, I could hear the faint sounds of the world I no longer belonged to, laughter turning uneasy, the shuffle of guests whispering to one another. Then the music stopped. Voices rose sharply, and then, just as suddenly, fell into silence. I waited. The sunlight dimmed behind the trees, and the roses that framed the gate seemed to wilt in the heat. My hands shook, still clutching my purse. I thought of the years I had worked double shifts to keep Michael in school, the nights I'd fallen asleep grading papers with his head on my shoulder. And I prayed that he would come back through that gate believing me. When he finally appeared, he was alone. The brightness from before was gone from his face. His tie hung loose, his expression unreadable. He stopped a few steps away, the gate still between us. "Mom," he said quietly, "please, go home. It was all a misunderstanding. I'll come by later." For a moment, I couldn't move. The air around us thickened with everything left unsaid. My voice trembled. "You believe her?" He looked away, his eyes fixed on the gravel. "It's not worth ruining today." I took a slow breath, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. "Then you've already ruined it." He flinched, almost imperceptibly, but said nothing. The silence between us widened until it became something unbridgeable. I looked at him one last time, not the man in the suit, but the boy who used to run to me in muddy sneakers, the one who once promised he'd never let anyone make me feel small. I turned before he could see my tears. My heels sank into the soft earth as I walked away, each step heavier than the last. Behind me, the faint sound of wedding bells began to ring. They should have been joyful, but in that moment, they sounded hollow, a ceremony for something that had already broken. When I reached the road, the wind carried the echo of applause from far behind. I didn't turn around. I kept walking, my hands trembling against my sides, the scent of roses fading with every step. The days that followed blurred together, heavy and airless, as if the world had decided to move on without me. The Charleston heat pressed against the windows, and I spent most of my time in the quiet watering the small garden, folding laundry that didn't need folding, pretending that silence was peace. One afternoon, while making tea, I opened my laptop and saw the photos. There they were, Michael and Lauren, smiling beneath a chandelier dripping with light, her hand resting on his chest. In another image, she leaned close to whisper something in his ear, her diamond catching the glow of the camera flash. The caption read, "A perfect day with family and friends." My name was nowhere. Neighbors stopped by with polite curiosity, some carrying casseroles, others offering awkward sympathy. We saw the pictures. "Elaine," they'd say softly, their eyes darting away. I'd smile and tell them it was beautiful, just as it should be. Then I'd close the door and breathe out the lie. Weeks passed before Michael came by. It was a Sunday evening, the air thick with the scent of rain. He stood in the doorway, shoulders tense, tie gone, eyes shadowed. "Mom," he said quietly, "please don't hold on to this. She swears it was an accident." I looked at him for a long time, studying the boy I had raised into this uneasy man. Then I said, calmly, "Then she's a better liar than I ever was a fool." He winced, but said nothing. For a moment, I thought he might reach for me the way he used to, out of habit more than affection, but he didn't. He turned and walked back to his car. That night, when the door finally clicked shut behind him, the house seemed smaller, the walls closer. Even the sound of the rain felt too far away to touch. The call came just as the first cold winds of November swept through Charleston. I was in the kitchen, peeling apples for a pie I hadn't planned to share with anyone, when the phone rang. The number flashed familiar, though I hadn't seen it in months. "Mom." His voice broke before he could finish the word. I was wrong. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The only sound was the slow hum of the refrigerator and the wind brushing against the shutters. "She drained my accounts," he said finally. "She left. There was nothing left. Mom, not even a note." I closed my eyes. The ache that rose inside me wasn't satisfaction. It was sorrow, deep and quiet. I wanted to reach through the line and hold him the way I used to when nightmares woke him as a child. But there was no comfort I could give that wouldn't reopen something old and raw. The next morning, I found him standing at my door, hands shoved into his coat pockets, eyes swollen from sleeplessness. For a second, he looked like the boy who used to stand there after scraping his knee, waiting for me to make it better. "You tried to warn me," he whispered. I shook my head. "No, Michael, I just tried to love you." He started to cry, then the kind of cry that comes from the gut, shaking and wordless. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him, gently, as if cradling the boy I'd never stopped seeing beneath the man he'd become.